Hey everybody, welcome back to Hemingway Land, and thanks as always for clicking the play button. So today we're going to be discussing properties in the Rio Del Oro subdivision in Valencia County, New Mexico. And if you're looking for land in this region, you came to the right place, because here at Hemingway Land, this is one of a number of subdivisions which we specialize in, literally buying and selling hundreds of parcels here each year. Now, normally on each of our listing pages, we like to post a video that discusses the details of a given property. The video you're about to watch, however, is not going to be a property-specific video, so much as it's going to be a subdivision-specific video. And this video will be posted at the top of each and every property's listing page that we have in this subdivision from now until the end of time. And why do we do this, guys? Because this region tends to be one that we buy and sell a lot of land in, and in the interest of efficiency, it makes more sense to make one comprehensive video that addresses all the common questions and concerns rather than making multiples. Additionally, once you've discussed the details of a specific region, the differences in individual properties tend to be relatively minor. Now, of course, as always, guys, each individual listing page is full of a lot of property-specific information that will help you, once you've learned about the subdivision, to better compare and contrast the listings we have available in it to figure out which works best for you. So for instance, on any one of our individual listing pages, if you come down here to the property details section, you can learn more about this specific property by clicking through these tabs and reading the information we've provided. Additionally, under the maps and boundaries section of the listing page, we'll have a number of interactive maps, plats, and drone overlays, which will detail the exact size, shape, and location of each individual listing. And finally, down here at the bottom of the page, we will always have a large and detailed photo gallery to help give you a better sense of the property, the terrain, and the surroundings. Additionally, guys, it should be noted that on every one of these individual listing pages, we will have this block image here, indicating that we have X amount of other listings available in this region. And when you click this Learn More button here, it will transport you immediately to what we like to call our Subdivision Master Information page. And on this page, you'll be able to see a list of all the available properties at once. Of course, this is designed to help you more easily compare and contrast them through their location on the map, or their legal description, their acreage, or their price point. Either way, guys, it's just a lot easier to see a list of what's available, narrow down your selections that way, and then visit that listing page to delve further into the details of that specific property. However you guys choose to do it, if you're looking to buy out here, I promise there is no better way to learn about this area and hence make an informed decision about purchasing than by watching this video. Now, here's the thing, guys. Much as I can promise that, I can also promise that for however informative this video may be, it will likely also be very long and at times a little boring. So we're going to throw the chapter breaks up on the screen here, so if there is a specific topic you want more information on, you can simply toggle ahead to that part of the video where the information will be discussed. Now, finally, guys, one last thing before we get started. There's a lot of people out there who are shopping for land online. We have offerings in a number of states. We add new ones every week, and we pride ourselves on informative property listings and videos like the one you're watching now. Point being, if you like what we're doing here, please help us reach more of those people by liking the video, sharing it with your friends. And if you're looking for land, but the properties we discuss in today's video don't do it for you, subscribe to our channel so you can be alerted every time that we list new ones. Now, with all that said, let's get to our discussion of Rio Del Oro. So, first off, the Rio Del Oro subdivision is located in Valencia County in the central part of New Mexico. It sits sandwiched between the I-25 and the Rio Grande in the west, and the Manzano Mountains in the east, and has a footprint of roughly 47,000 acres, occupying all the land you see outlined here. Now, of course, this subdivision sits right outside Los Lunas, which is the county seat of Valencia County, and because of this, the subdivision also sits in close proximity of some big box stores such as Walmart and Home Depot, as well as grocery stores, pharmacies, restaurants, schools, churches, and all the essentials that make up your average small town. Now, Valencia County has a population of about 78,000, but it's one of the faster growing regions in the state, specifically because it sits just south of the largest city in the state, namely Albuquerque. And this is important to know for a couple of reasons. First off, being within a roughly 30-minute car ride from a major metropolitan area means that you are never too far from a lot of the bigger attractions such as shows, concerts, nightlife, sporting events, galleries, restaurants, so on and so forth. It also means that whatever you can't get in Los Lunas, you're likely to find up here, such as maybe specialized medical services or just more places to shop. Additionally, it's a town of a little more than 500,000 people, so of course there's always something going on up here, such as the balloon fiesta every October. Now, the second reason this is important is that you're seeing a lot of the population and business overflow of Albuquerque starting to make its way south into Valencia County. That means more businesses are beginning to locate down here, and with them, people either moving here for work or moving here so they can live in a less expensive, what we'll call bedroom community of Albuquerque. Maybe they're getting priced out of that area, maybe they just want to live in a region with a slower pace, maybe they want to own more land. Whatever the reason, you find more people willing to make the commute who are calling Valencia County home. Now, in addition, it should be noted that if you live here, it also means that you're only about 2 hours north of the largest body of water in the state, namely Elephant Butte Lake, which of course can provide some nice weekend trips for boating, fishing, and general relaxation. That, of course, is located just south of here in nearby Sierra County. Now, if you're watching all this wondering how so much undeveloped land can exist in a region this desirable, that brings us to our next topic, namely the history of this subdivision. So, this subdivision is like a lot of subdivisions you find in New Mexico, which is to say that it was created in and around the same time, which is the early 1960s, when some developer came in, bought up a couple thousand acres of land, and chopped everything up into smaller parcels, which they then went on to resell. And if you're a really, really rich guy and you have the money and the means to buy up 50,000 acres of land for the purposes of subdividing and reselling, you're going to want to create as many new parcels as possible because it means you will make more money. So while you could create 5,000 10-acre parcels or 10,000 5-acre parcels, what you find particularly out here is that these guys went even further and created subdivisions with 50,000 1-acre parcels, 100,000 half-acre parcels, or in the case of Rio Del Oro, 200,000 quarter-acre parcels. Whatever the case, once you've got a couple thousand new parcels to sell, much less an inventory as big as what they had, it takes an aggressive and concentrated effort for a long time to move that amount of inventory. And that's what these developers spent the better part of the next decade doing, sending salespeople out to rent the ballroom at the Ramada in downtown Omaha or wherever, and host a presentation about why people should buy some quarter or half-acre chunk of desert land outside Albuquerque. And while I was not in the room for any of those presentations, from everything I have ever heard or read about it, a fair amount of what we'll call hyperbole was used when it came to describing the pace at which the region was expanding and the value the land in this region would have in the immediate future. And if you look at the original deeds for this region, you'll see that a large percentage of these lots were sold to people back east, New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Florida, or, put another way, places where people wouldn't know any better. They weren't local to the region, they couldn't drive there easily, and so they took the salesman's word that this was going to be a good investment. And to this day, if you do any kind of research, any kind of Googling on this area, you find the term scam thrown around a lot. Technically, it wasn't. The people gave them money for a property, the company sold them the property, not a scam. But many felt the development potential of the region had been, we'll say, exaggerated. Okay, now, whatever value the land had when these people bought it in the 60s immediately depreciated once the 70s rolled around, because that's when the powers that be in the state of New Mexico looked around and said, hey, wait a minute, we're a desert state with a finite water supply, and we've got developers turning one residential lot into 100,000 residential lots. We're never going to be able to sustain that. Additionally, because it was a time where more consideration was being given to not just conservation, but the environment as well, they simultaneously started to say, and even if we could drill 100,000 working water wells next to one another, we need to put some rules in place for how people dispose of waste, otherwise that groundwater is going to become contaminated. So, the State Environmental Agency made up a whole bunch of regulations for how waste was to be disposed of on a residential lot. And I'll spare you the really long version of this and simplify it down to the conventional wisdom you may have heard elsewhere, which is, in areas without city utilities, such as this one, you need at least 3/4 of an acre of land to build on. You need at least yay amount of distance between your well and your septic and your neighbor's well and septic, otherwise you can't build here. And how did these new regulations impact subdivisions like this? In a word, negatively. So the first effect it had was that it eliminated the ability of most of the landowners to develop their property. You see, because the average lot out here was a 1/4 acre, and the lots were sold at such a premium, very few people bought more than one. Or if they did, they certainly didn't buy more than 3, which is what they would have needed to meet that 3/4 acre requirement. The second thing it did was that it retarded any sort of development potential the region had, because now all the utility companies knew no one could build out here, so why should we run a bunch of cables, set up poles, power lines, things like that? Additionally, because the county knew it wasn't going to be developed, why should they pave or maintain the roads? You get the point. So the people who bought the land in the 60s now don't care about it, which means the ones who bothered to write a will didn't include it in the will. So they died, and now there's a dead person on title, which means no one in the family can do anything with the land. They can't develop it, and they can't sell it. Or you've got the people who want to do something with it, but they don't understand the process. Now, the taxes out here are $5 a year per parcel. If dad owned 1 or 2 or even 10 lots, it's not a big deal to keep paying the taxes. So most people do, even though they don't actually own the land, can't develop it, and can't sell it. Then you've got the ones who want to do something with the property, who understand they need to probate it and get it in their name, but they don't want to pay a couple $1,000s to an attorney, so they just keep paying the taxes too. And mind you guys, a lot of these second-generation owners live in another state. It's a lot easier for them to just mail off a check to Valencia County once a year than it is to fly out to New Mexico, hire an attorney, and petition the probate court. And so again, they continue to pay the taxes on land they don't own, can't develop, and can't sell. Or you've got the people who know what they have to do and don't even care that much, so they just stop paying the taxes, assuming the state will eventually take the land back and resell it at auction. In most cases, however, because the taxes are so small, it costs the state more to initiate some sort of foreclosure proceeding than the amount they would recoup in outstanding taxes, and thus the state doesn't do anything with it either. And all of that is the reason, to answer our question from earlier, of how this much undeveloped land can exist in a region this desirable. So, after everything I've just discussed, the question becomes, why buy land in this region? If these weren't worth buying in the 70s, why are they worth buying now? Well, here's the thing, guys. A lot has changed in the last half century, and a lot of that works to the benefit of today's land buyer. Case in point. 50 years ago, the population of Albuquerque was 315,000. Today, it's 672,000. The population of Valencia County was 20,000. Today, it's 78,000. When those original buyers were told that the area was growing, this subdivision was still in the middle of nowhere. Now, however, if we go to a map, we'll see the population growth has caught up with the region. And now there's all this encroaching development here along the western and northwestern ends of the sub. There's homes here, there's businesses here, there's schools here. And when you see a population growing like this, it means there are developers here actively looking for more land to build on. And that isn't just true of the western part of the sub, but all the parts in between. Now, assessed values out here haven't changed much in the last 50 years, and the county still assesses the parcels closest to development at the same rate they assess the ones furthest from development. Point being, on paper, they're still seen as not terribly valuable. And because of this, there have been developers and casual investors taking advantage of this fact and slowly buying up and recombining as many lots as they can get their hands on from owners who either don't know or don't care about what value this might have in some indeterminate future. So, as an example, if we look at this map, average parcel size out here is 1/4 acre. If you've got 4, you've got 1 acre of land, and if you've got 40, you've got 10 acres, right? Okay. So, some developers and investors make a concerted effort to look at a small chunk of land, and they start to contact the landowners there, offering not much money to buy their property. And maybe they get these two from one owner for next to nothing, and they get this one from another owner for next to nothing. These two are owned by people who are dead, but the next of kin is alive, so the developers pay for the probate costs, get the land in that person's name, then buy it from that person. You get the point. And slowly over a couple months or years, they're able to acquire 34 of the 40 parcels that make up these 10 acres. I see a lot of that out here by the professional developers, investors, and home builders, but I also see the casual investors, the ones who maybe can't do all that, but who can buy up one lot here and one lot there, and try to get their hands on as many as possible, specifically for the purpose of selling to the highly motivated, deep-pocketed developer. There's a lot that do that specifically to, we'll say, hold the land hostage until the developer buys them out. And so that's one of the major advantages to buying land out here now. Okay, but maybe you don't want to buy land here purely for investment purposes. Maybe you don't care about that at all. Let's say instead you want to build. You live in Albuquerque, you're tired of paying rent, you work from home most days anyway, you don't want neighbors. Whatever the reason, you've decided you want a chunk of land somewhere in this area to call your own, which you can develop for yourself. Okay, so let's talk about that. So, as noted, back in the 70s, because of that 3/4 acre rule, it became impossible to develop the standard 1/4 acre parcel common to this region. And that rule is still in place. Fortunately for you guys, we here at Hemingway Land understand the restrictions on building out here and have focused on buying and recombining adjacent parcels to be able to offer our customers enough land by which they can comfortably be able to develop their dream property. We focus on, and at the time I'm recording this video, have acquired a number of adjacent parcels we're selling which total a minimum of 3/4 acre, with some being as large as 1, 1.5, 2, and even 3 acres in size. In short, we focus on adding value to the region by taking 1/4 acre lots that can't be developed and turning them into larger parcels that can. In addition, guys, just to address this topic for a second, Because of the changes in technology and advancements in environmentally friendly off-grid living, it's even become easier to develop the lots smaller than 3/4 of an acre. There are parts of New Mexico where people do that by using things like holding tanks or rainwater catchment systems instead of wells, and various septic workarounds that have since come to be approved by the state EPA. Now, this isn't necessarily something we recommend for this region. It's possible to do, yes. Practically speaking, however, if your plan is to build on a property out here, you really want to buy an amount of land greater than 3/4 of an acre. I promise, guys, whatever extra you spend on the land, you'll save on permits and various zoning hurdles you'd be expected to jump through. Now, finally, guys, just to stay on the topic of the smaller lots for a second, let's say you don't want to invest and you don't want to build. Maybe you're just someone who likes to travel in their RV. You're a snowbird who likes to go south during the winter, visit the state parks in New Mexico and Arizona. Basically, you're looking for land you could camp or park on for short periods of time. These smaller lots are perfect for that because they can be used for those purposes for 30 days at a time. Now, to be clear, guys, you can't live on the thing in an RV. You can't stay there indefinitely, but you can use it that way for a whole month at a time. Okay, so now that we've discussed the value of land in Rio Del Oro, let's talk about how to find the property that works best for you. Alright, so as noted, guys, outlined on the map here, we see the Rio Del Oro subdivision, which again is sandwiched between the I-25 and the Rio Grande River to its west, and the Manzano Mountains to its east. The subdivision consists of 47,000 acres, and those acres are broken into 62 units of land. Those 62 units are numbered 1 to 65, with no unit 19, 52, or 59, hence the weird math. The average lot size in this region, and let me say that again, average lot size is a 1/4 acre, meaning there are roughly 200,000 lots spread out over these 62 units. And if you come back here to our Rio Del Oro master information page, you will see that we have provided a list of all of our available properties organized by their legal description, which of course begins with the unit. Now, at the time that I'm recording this video, we have about 150 listings here, but depending on when you're watching this, we're likely to have, I'm sure, anywhere between 20 and 200. And if you're sitting there saying, oh my God, Hemingway, this is a lot of information to absorb, how am I ever going to find my ideal property? Well, fortunately for you guys, we've got you covered, because also located on our Rio Del Oro master information page, as well as all the individual listing pages for properties in this region, you will find this map of the subdivision, which we have helpfully broken down into zones. These zones are numbered 1 through 8 and move across the subdivision from west to east, breaking down the various regions into more easily digestible chunks of a couple square miles at a time. In addition, just to make it easier to read, we have provided slides of each of the respective zones, which not only include notations about whatever major roads cut through the area, but also what unit numbers make up the zone. So, as an example, let's say you know you want to buy land close to development. The ideal zones for that are 1, 2, and 4. And let's pretend that of these 3 zones, you know you want to be closer to development in the northwestern portion of the sub. So you go to Zone 2 and you look at the slide here, and you see that land in that zone is exclusively in units 55 through 60. So now when you come back up here on the master list of properties, you know exactly where to look by scrolling down to the inventory we have in these respective units. Then you can simply click on this View on Map button here to see where each of these individual listings is located. And of course, guys, once you find the one you think works best for you, simply go over here and click on the Learn More button, and you'll be taken to that property's listing page where you can learn more about that specific chunk of land. See how easy we make this? Alright, now a couple things I want to note here, guys. First off, absent some formal address like 123 Main Street, unit, block, and lot are the official ways of identifying vacant land, and they're how someone in the county government would do it. This zone map, however, is entirely our own creation, simply meant to better help you with your search for land. Point being, if you call the assessor and start referring to Zone 1, Zone 2, they'll have no clue what you're talking about, okay? That's number 1. Number 2, this zone map can be very helpful in narrowing down which properties might fit what you're looking for. So, for instance, as I just said, units 1, 2, and 4 are closest to homes, schools, and churches, and thus might be best for investment purposes or finding land which might reasonably be in the path of development or even utility expansion. Zone 3 is also pretty close to encroaching development, but not as much as the other regions, and it certainly doesn't have the same presence of utilities, and thus we separated it from the others and gave it its own zone. Zones 5 and 6 are more removed, less developed, and have no utilities, but might be good for buyers looking for more privacy while still being close enough to make easy trips into town. And Zones 7 and 8 are really for those who want to be closer to the mountains and want maximum privacy, those people who don't want to see anyone. Now, Zone 7 starts you into the foothills where you've got some nice scenery, and by the time you get into Zone 8, you're at the end of the subdivision, you're backing up to the mountains, and you've got some really great views. And this is especially true as all the land to the east of here is county or U.S. forest owned, meaning that in all likelihood will never be developed, or at least not in our lifetimes. Now, while the master list may be good for narrowing down the property's location by zone, maybe you don't care about zones. Maybe you're not interested in location. Maybe you're one of those investors we mentioned earlier who's buying up all the lots you can find in one very specific, very concentrated block. Well, fortunately for you, this list is arranged by legal description, so you can search it that way by referring to these columns here. Or maybe you're more interested in a property's size. You're buying the land to build, and you want to find every listing that's at least 3/4 of an acre. Fortunately for you, you can search the properties based on size by referring to the acres column here. Or, if you've got a budget in mind and you know you don't want to spend more than X, you can search on the property's price by referring to the price column here. Finally, guys, we've got one last thing here I want to show you just to help you in your search for the ideal property, and it's this button up here marked Full Listing Details. And if you click on this, it's going to bring up a Google Sheet in a new window. And while this sheet has a lot of the same information you would have seen presented on the property list, it also has some additional columns, including zone, plat map, notations about the property, what kind of financing is offered, if any, and links you can click to either go directly to that property's listing page or purchase it outright. Now, of course, all this information can be found on the individual listing pages, but it's just an easier way to review multiple listings at once. Additionally, guys, unlike the property list, which only includes the properties currently in inventory, this sheet will also have all the parcels we've ever sold in this region, with the ones in blue being the ones sold in the past, and the ones in white currently available. Okay, so now that you've found your ideal property, let's talk about the next things you need to know when it comes to using and developing the land, namely access, utilities, and zoning. So first off, if we go back to the map here for a second, you've got a couple of arterials that cut through Rio Del Oro from north to south and east to west. These are the Rio Del Oro Loop, the Manzano Expressway, and Military Road, and they are what we will call primary roads, meaning that they're paved, county maintained, well labeled with signs and directionals, and they can be safely driven in any vehicle type. And these roads will get you about 90% of the way to any property you buy in this region. The secondary roads out here, however, are the opposite. They are not paved, they are not regularly maintained, and they are not labeled. Additionally, their quality condition varies greatly. Some will look like this, some like this, others like this, and some closer to the mountains may even look like this. And there are even some you can be standing on and you wouldn't know it's supposed to be a road. In fact, if we go to some of our drone high angles here, you can see what were clearly designed to be roads at some point in the past, but which have become overgrown to such an extent, they're only really identified from above. Now, while this is not ideal, there are two things working in your favor here. The first is that the terrain and the climate out here are such that even if something is overgrown and it's 100 yards off the main road, it's still pretty easy to get to in a larger truck. Additionally, if you are someone looking to develop the land, if you've got a building permit and you're a tax-paying landowner, and you call and ask the county to come out and blade a road, they're usually pretty good about that. We've sold enough properties in regions like this, and I've heard enough stories from our buyers to know that that sort of thing is fairly easy to get done. All right, now, let's talk about utilities. So, as noted earlier, there was never a huge push to extend residential power lines and underground telecom throughout this area. Most of the properties we buy out here don't have them anywhere close. So if you are looking to develop the property and use it either seasonally or year-round, in all likelihood you're going to need to research alternatives such as solar panels. Now, it should be noted that if you're looking for property close to utilities, you'll want to look in zones 1, 2, and 4, as these are the zones which actually have developed home sites and communities, as well as plans to build others. And it's within these areas that our listings are more likely to feature power lines and cable boxes. And while not every listing in these zones will have this feature, if you want to check to see which ones do, you can always come to the individual listing pages and click on the Access and Utilities tab, where we will always make notations about the proximity of utilities, if any, or you can go back to that spreadsheet I showed you earlier, which includes this column marked Power, and if you scroll down, you can quickly see which listings will either have it or be close enough to it. And in case it needs to be said, any property you buy in this region, whether it's Zone 1, Zone 8, or anywhere in between, there are no city water lines and you will need to drill a well. What's the average drill depth out here? What will that cost? These are things we cannot provide exact answers to, and thus, as with all our listings, we recommend you contact well drillers local to the region, as they will know far more about this topic than we ever could. Next, zoning. So when it comes to zoning out here, the Rio Del Oro subdivision is zone PD, or planned development. And if you come back here to any one of our listing pages and scroll down to the zoning and restrictions tab, you will see, linked here, an excerpt from the county zoning ordinance, which helps to better define what this means. And if we read the first line, we will see that it says, quote, "The purpose of the planned development district is to allow and encourage comprehensive development rather than parcel by parcel development." Now, this one's a bit tricky, so let me try to explain it. You remember how we said that after more uniform statewide zoning was introduced back in the 70s, it basically retarded the growth in this region because you needed 3/4 of an acre to build on and no one had that much land? And you remember how we said that it was at that point that the county stopped maintaining the roads and utility companies stopped extending power lines? Okay, well, a similar thing happened with the zoning, which is that it kind of became stuck in time. Everyone in the county who ever looked at this subdivision said the best use of land would be a developer coming in, recombining 20 acres at a time, building single-family home sites, and bringing in city utilities to service them a couple blocks at a time. And if you read this PDF, you will see that that is precisely who this is written for. They do not presume anyone has enough land to develop, in this case the coveted 3/4 of an acre, or that anyone would want to. Okay, and yet, when we study the landscape of Rio del Oro, you will find a number of home sites such as this one, here's another one over here, and here's another, all of which have been built as standalone structures absent any formal housing development or city utilities. In short, even though the zoning ordinance prefers comprehensive development rather than parcel by parcel, it does not prohibit it. And if I had to take a guess, and I could be wrong on this, but I'd be willing to bet the lots those homes were built on were probably rezoned as R1 or rural residential 1 to accommodate those owners. But that's just a guess. Either way, guys, if you're buying land out here or anywhere for that matter, always consult with the zoning first, get clarification on these issues, make sure you can do what you want to do, okay? Next, just as important as zoning when it comes to developing land, covenants and restrictions. When the Rio del Oro subdivision was first created, the developer drew up a set of covenants and restrictions to run with the land. These types of documents normally enumerate rules for development, such as acceptable structures and minimum square footage requirements. And while the Rio del Oro covenants were no exception, in the decades since, this document has been updated and amended in, from what we can tell, every unit and most blocks of the subdivision. In most every case, the covenants were amended to simply conform to local zoning. In some cases, certain blocks and lots, either retained or reacquired by the developer, were reclassified as commercial or public use zones. Some of the original covenants have either become outdated or unenforceable, such as ones that make mention of an architectural control committee that doesn't exist and never did. In short, anyone concerned about the original covenants need only familiarize themselves with local zoning, as the two are largely redundant at this point in time. Next, HOAs. Rio del Oro doesn't have any. In addition, there are no annual dues associated with land ownership out here, so aside from the annual taxes of $5 per parcel you have to pay to the county, there will be no additional dues or fees. Next, time limits on building. This is a topic that confuses a lot of people, so let me simplify this. If you buy the property, you are under no obligation to develop it. Leave it as a patch of dirt for the next 100 years, no one will ever say anything. The minute you decide to build, however, and you get a building permit and you stick a shovel in the ground, that's when the clock starts. What's the time on the clock? Usually around 12 months. That said, there's always extensions on these sorts of things. The important thing to understand, however, is that no one wants to see a half-built structure in their community dragging down property values for 5 years while the owner takes his sweet loving time finishing it, okay? And finally, for those of you buying land for recreational purposes, you should know that Valencia County allows for RVing and camping for 30 days in a calendar year or up to 12 months with a building permit. Additionally, RVs can only be used recreationally and cannot be used as a permanent dwelling. Alright guys, now a couple final miscellaneous points just to wrap up here. First off, I want to address parcel size for a second. So when you get into master platted subdivisions like this, the developers usually try to break the lots down into equal sizes. Of course, there will always be aspects of the topography, such as a mountain or an arroyo, which cause certain parcels to be markedly bigger or smaller than the average, but for the most part, what you'll encounter in regions like this is what we will call deliberate uniformity. Rio del Oro, however, is a little different because of how they chose to draw up the plat. So as an example, one of the things you find out here is a lot of quarter-acre rectangles like this lined up one after another. But instead of going on for a half a mile, as you might find in other subdivision, the blocks in Rio Del Oro were all created with cul-de-sacs, like you see here. The point is that the cul-de-sac lots are all slightly larger than the standard quarter-acre lots. Now, why is this important? So, for the most part, when we list properties in a subdivision like this, where everything is whatever, a quarter acre in size, if we have 2 adjacent lots, they're normally a half acre in size. If we have 4, then they're normally an acre in size, so on and so forth. And if something is marginally bigger than the lots around it, say a third of an acre instead of a quarter, we really don't make that big a deal out of it. In Rio Del Oro, however, because there are so many oddly shaped outsized lots, and because we have so many listings that are combinations of 3 or 4 or 5 parcels, they're not always going to add up to what one might think they would. And that's why if you look at our property list, you'll see a lot of very specific numbers in the acreage column. And at times you might find 2 adjacent lots that don't equal a half an acre, but come closer to 3/4 of an acre or 1 acre in size. Now, parcel size matters a lot, especially in a region like this, where that 3/4 acre threshold is so important. And that brings me to my next point. So, a lot of times when we're selling land, especially in Valencia County, people will look up the lots or the ownership information on some mapping app or software, and they'll call us up and they'll say, hey, that thing you're saying is 1 acre in size, such and such a website over here says it's only a half acre. What gives? And while there are about 4 dozen mapping apps in existence, all of which pull their information from the same places and are, across the board, pretty reliable, I have noticed that nowhere, in any of the states we buy and sell land in, do I encounter more discrepancies in lot size than in Valencia County, and specifically over here in what we'll call this Rio Communities region. Some maps will say that a 1 acre lot is only a half acre in size, others will say it's 2 acres, others will say it's 5. So, in the interest of eliminating all confusion right now, I want to show you guys where we get these very precise acreage calculations from and how you can check on them if you are so inclined. So, all of our numbers come from the Valencia County Assessor. And if you go to the Valencia County Assessor's website and click on this Assessor Parcel Map link here, it's going to bring up this screen. And if you take any one of the parcel numbers that we include on the listing page of the property we're selling, and they can all be found here under legal information, if you copy and paste this number into this search box here, it will bring the property up on a map. And if you go to this little bubble here and scroll down to approximate area acres, you'll see what size Valencia County says this lot is. So if we've got 5 or 6 lots combined and we're saying they total, whatever, 5 acres of land, you can come to this site, check each parcel, add them up, and see how we came to that number. Okay? Next, let's talk about photos. So here at Hemingway Land, we pride ourselves on always getting pictures of the properties we're selling. We want to give our buyers as accurate a sense of the land as we possibly can, and thus, prior to listing anything, we get it photographed. And if you go to any one of our Rio Del Oro listing pages, you're going to see a photo gallery of a couple dozen images. That said, unlike our typical listings, these images are not from a specific property, but rather from the zone the property is in. So if Zone 1 is whatever, 5 square miles, let's say, then all the photos in a Zone 1 listing will be taken from within that 5 square mile region. And why do we do this, guys? Well, reasonably speaking, there's not a lot of difference between 1/4 acre lot located over here and a 1/4 acre lot located a couple hundred yards down the road. The access, utilities, terrain, scenery, it's not going to change all that much. The photos won't be that different. Additionally, if we had to pay a photographer to go out here every time we've got a new 1/4 acre lot, we'd never be able to sell at these prices. Now, the subdivision is massive, so of course there will be a noticeable change from, say, Zone 1 to Zone 5, or Zone 5 to Zone 8, and that's why we get dozens of images from those specific zones. This way we offer as comprehensive a sense of the land as we possibly can. And it should be noted, guys, any properties we list that are north of 1.25 acres tend to get a little pricey, and those are properties we will still get individually photographed. So, for instance, if you look at a listing like this 1.25 acre property, which we're selling for $62.50, you'll be able to see photos from the land itself, including the drone overlays, which can be found up here, and which will give an even better sense of the immediate surroundings. Point being, guys, despite the fact the images are not from a specific property, we would not be doing it this way if we didn't feel that it was still very representative of the land you'd be buying. And if you disagree and you need to see the exact parcel, we totally understand, and you are more than welcome to take a drive out to that property anytime of any day you please. Finally, guys, I want to wrap up by talking a little bit about price. So Rio Del Oro is, on a price per acre or price per lot basis, more expensive than a lot of the neighboring subdivisions of undeveloped land you will find in Valencia County. Now, it's by no means expensive, but it is more expensive than land just south of here in some of the other subs. Why is this? Well, because the lots were originally subdivided into such small parcels, and because you need to recombine so many of them to have a property that you can actually develop, and because it is so hard to find adjacent lots out here, it makes the few that exist that much more valuable. Additionally, because Rio Del Oro is further north in the county, it puts it a lot closer to housing that already exists and communities that have already been developed. So, simply by merit of the location, the land is valued higher. So, as an example, our standard price in Rio Del Oro is what you see here on the screen. Quarter-acre listings start at $9.99, half acres at $24.50, three-quarter acres at $37.50, and 1 acre listings at $5,000. And of course, as the listings get larger, the prices graduate accordingly. And if you were to look up other listings within Rio Del Oro, you would see that our listings are priced competitively and lower than pretty much anything that's out there. If, however, you were to do a generic search of vacant land all throughout Valencia County, you will find a number of properties priced lower. Case in point, in Rio Grande Estates, which sits just south of Rio Del Oro, the average lot sizes are a half and 1 acre. They're easier to recombine and hence easier to develop. And because of this, land in this subdivision is a lot cheaper. Now, it should be noted that if price is more important to you than location or even the exact subdivision, then you'll be glad to know that here at Hemingway Land, we also buy and sell hundreds of lots a year in that subdivision. And of course, those listings can also be found by going to our New Mexico page, scrolling down to Valencia County, where you can find the master information page of that subdivision, where our half-acre listings start at $800, our 1 acre listings start at $1,600, and prices graduate along with parcel size. And why do I mention all this, guys? Well, because here at Hemingway Land, we work very hard to offer properties at competitive and below market prices. We study the market, we study what our competition does, and then we try to come in below that. And if you know nothing about this region, you may say, why are they selling a 1 acre lot over here for $1,600 and one over here for $5,000? This other one must be overpriced. It must be a ripoff. Well, I assure you it is not. It's just what makes sense for that region based on a variety of factors where the size of the land is only one element. All that said, guys, it is your hard-earned money, and if you doubt me in any way, I encourage you, look around the internet, see if you can find properties out here for less. I, however, am confident, very confident, that whatever concerns you have about price will be assuaged when you see what these lots are commonly sold for. Alright people, so if you would like to purchase one of these properties, you could do it one of 3 ways I will detail here. Before I get to that, however, guys, let me just quickly say, if you thought this video was long before, me detailing the purchasing process while attempting to address all the common questions and all the common concerns here would only double the runtime. So I'm going to go through this quickly, and I'm going to advise you that if I go too fast, if there's anything here that doesn't make sense to you, if there is any aspect of this process that is unclear, that you would like to learn more about and understand better, we have very helpfully included on our site pages, guys, such as the ambiguously titled How It Works, Buying From Us, which will go into far greater detail than I will be able to provide here about those 3 purchasing processes, okay? Whatever the case, whichever one of these 3 you choose, it all begins here at the Buy Now button found at the top of each and every one of our listing pages. So let me run through this quickly, guys. Here we go. The first way to purchase property is what we like to call the website close, where you pay the entire cost of the land directly to our company. Now, depending on how much the property costs, that will take one of 2 forms. So for properties under $5,000, such as this one, you click the Buy Now button here, fill out all of your information as well as the information for the deed, pay the full purchase price with a credit or debit card, and within 24 hours, we will send you an email with documentation to read. That email will include a copy of your new deed, which you will need to review and approve. And once that's done, we mail the deed off to the county records it, and congratulations, the property is officially yours. And yes, it's really that easy. Now, for properties over $5,000, such as this one, the process is almost exactly the same, except at checkout, we only ask for $500 instead of the total amount. And why do we do this, guys? Well, since most people can't charge more than $5,000 on their credit card at once, this allows all of our buyers the ability to at least initiate the transaction without having to get us on the phone. So for instance, if you have a card with a daily charging limit of $1,000, and you want to buy this property here, that's fine. We could do $1,000 a day for 6 days, or whatever specific math makes sense for your situation. However you choose to do it, the process works out the same way, which is that once you pay the remaining balance and approve the deed, we mail it off to the county records it, and once again, congratulations, the property is officially yours. Now that brings us to the second process by which you can purchase property from us, and that is buying on terms or paying a smaller down payment and then subsequent monthly payments and paying down the remaining balance slowly over time. Now keep in mind guys, this second method is not available on all of our properties, but when it is, you will see a second buy now button here on the listing page, and if you click that, it will detail whatever the down payment monthly payment setup might be. So for instance here, instead of paying the entire $37.50 at once, this allows for $6.99 down and $150 a month for 30 months. Additionally, guys, as you can see on this specific property, we allow 90 days same as cash, meaning that whether you pay the whole thing on day 1 or day 90, you're only paying $37.50 total. Now, of course, keep in mind this particular breakdown is for this one sample property I'm showing you here in the video. Terms will obviously be different depending on the property. That said, all of the terms contracts we provide our buyers have, and this is important to note guys, only prepayment incentives and no prepayment penalties. Additionally, because we're talking about contracts, it's important to mention one aspect of how we like to do business here at Hemingway Land, which is anytime you're going to be asked to sign a contract, such as in this case a land contract, we always provide a sample copy at checkout. That way you know exactly what you will be asked to sign before you give us even $1. Finally guys, it's important to note that for those of you who are skeptical about buying land online and giving thousands of dollars to strangers over the internet, we completely understand. Fortunately for you, we have a third method by which you can purchase property, which is a title escrow close. And the way this one works is you pay the entire cost of the land, but you pay it to a title company. So again, you come here, you place a $500 non-refundable deposit at checkout. We get you a different set of documentation, again, within 24 hours. This includes a contract, which, again, you can review here. You sign it, we submit it to the title company, and they do the rest. And then, at close of escrow, they request the remaining balance on the property. You pay them instead of strangers on the internet. And only once our company has deeded the property into your name, will the title company release your money to us. Now, people, let me just briefly pause to say this. If you have never purchased property before, if you are not familiar with what a title company does, let me make it real easy on you. A title company is a third-party intermediary that handles both the conveyance of the property and the disbursement of the funds. Now let me go one step further and make it even simpler. A title company is a business whose whole job in life is to prevent fraud in real estate transactions. So if you are skeptical about buying land on the internet, and again, we completely understand, this is the option for you. Now, it should be noted, guys, that for properties like these, most of which are under $5,000, we don't encounter a lot of buyers who want or care about title insurance. If you are one of them, however, that's fine. We will gladly close through title on any property on our site. And we particularly recommend it for one such as this, priced north of $10,000. And of course, guys, it's worth noting that if you have any questions about closing through a title company, you'll be glad to know that much as we have this handy How Buying Works page on our site, we also have the even more handy title escrow facts page, which will go into even greater detail about how that process works. With all that said, if you guys have any questions we didn't address here, feel free to reach out to us, the contact info you see on the screen. And if you made it all the way through the video, we appreciate you watching. We hope you found it informative. I'm guessing you did, so please give us a like, share the video with your friends, and please remember to subscribe to the channel. We debut new listings every week, along with informative property videos like the one you just sat through. So if these listings didn't do it for you, the next ones just might. Thanks as always for watching, everyone, and we'll see you back here in our next video. Cheers.